What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Chasing Clarity Health and Fitness podcast. This is your host, Brandon DeCruz, and on today's episode, we're going to cover the topic of NEAT. So, I'm going to be taking a deep dive into non exercise activity and how it impacts calorie expenditure, body composition, and your likelihood of gaining fat. So, before we get into the meat of today's topic, I wanted to make an announcement and share a little bit of a change in direction of this show. So, as of today's episode, I'll be taking over the podcast myself full time, and I will be the sole podcast host moving forward. And over the last 2.5 years that we've been doing the Chasing Clarity Health and Fitness podcast, Jeff and I have had a great time working on this project together. However, I was just down in Nashville this past weekend visiting him, and we sat down to discuss the direction of the show and where to take it moving forward to benefit those of you who listen the most. And when I first came up with the idea of doing this podcast, I went to Jeff to help me get it off the ground because up until that point, I had only been a guest on other people's podcasts, including the Excellence Cartel, which was a show that Jeff hosted for 4+ years. So he was an experienced podcast host. I was more so an experienced podcast guest. So we had different skill sets that we were able to combine and really leverage when creating the show. So since day one, we've always handled different roles for the show. So the um, educational content, the information dissemination, and really the educational role has always been on me. It's always been my role, being as that's mostly my strong suit. And then Jeff has always been the producer and the main host of the show, and the one that's been hitting me with hard hitting questions, as he's a great host and is really inquisitive. So it made for a great dynamic, especially because anytime Jeff and I are together, we literally spend hours discussing different topics in detail. So when I went to him with this idea, I knew if anyone was going to be able to get me out of my skin in terms of an ability to convey the information that I have verbally, it was going to be Jeff, because he was someone that was doing this in person as a friend already. So he knew that I had the information, and he knew if he asked me questions in a specific way that it would just pull things from my mind. So there's been many times that we've been in person and he has asked me about a particular topic and I could just pull these studies off the top of my head, and he knows that about me. So he's been great at being able to put me in a position where I've been able to show off my skill set and really feel comfortable. Because I'll be honest with you guys, when I first started doing the podcast, or even podcast in general, I just wasn't comfortable with public speaking or being on Zoom and things of that sort. And that's changed over the last 4 to 5 years that I've been doing podcasting. But especially from an IT perspective or a production perspective, that was Jeff's lane, and something that he's much better at than me. However, when I look back, and really, if we go back 2.5 years ago when we created the show, Jeff and I both had very different lives, priorities, and schedules. And at that time, we both had more free time to get together and record these. And at this point in our lives, we both have a ton of other projects and priorities. And with each passing month, I'll be honest with you guys, it's been more and more difficult to find an hour block that we both have free that we can align with one another and really get these recordings. So a lot of times, I think many of those who don't do podcasting themselves and they just are a listener, they don't understand how much goes into a podcast, because it's not only the time that it takes to record, but there's so many other aspects on the back end that are time costly and take away from our ability to do other things that pay our bills and provide for our families and really are what move our businesses moving forward. And this is something Jeff and I had to speak about and obviously taking into consideration. Another thing is, I'm just someone who is very much known for consistency in everything that I do. I have what I refer to as a never miss mentality. And since day or week one, actually, of the show, I've never missed an episode. I've never missed a week of recording an episode. And I want to continue that. Since episode one of this podcast, I aimed to set a standard, and I refuse to lower the bar I've set for myself. As I know a lot of you out there, look forward to these on a weekly basis, especially the clients that I work with one on one and in person. And so, in an effort to make sure that I'm able to put the show out on a weekly basis, I'm going to take over this full time myself. I'm going to continue to deliver the podcast in an educational and value packed format that is delivered each and every week. So, you guys can rely on this. Now, Jeff is one of my closest friends, and I want to say this. I am truly thankful to him for doing this with me as long as he has, because honestly, this has been my baby. Like, this project has been my baby since day one, and he supported me throughout the entire process. And without him, we wouldn't have a podcast, nor would I have reached thousands of you out there, and also hundreds of thousands of listens and downloads throughout the course of this podcast, or how long it's been around. Because at the end of the day, honestly, I'm not a tech expert. I'm a coach who's passionate, and I really want to empower others through education. So I've already discussed it with Jeff, and I will be pulling him back on. So for you out there that you're a fan of Jeff, you're a client of Jeff, you just love hearing him on the show, don't worry, he will be back. And we're going to continue recording at some points when it fits our schedule, but it just won't be on a regular weekly basis. As we're both working on so many other things on the back end of our business, it's honestly just much easier for me to take this over, to be able to record it. Like, guys, right now it's 3:16 a.m. in the morning on Monday. I'm recording it in my own time right before, I'll do a block of this and then I'll go into a block of check-ins. And so I really want to do this and spearhead this project on my own. So I hope that you will all continue to tune in and also continue providing me with feedback on the show, as ultimately I'm trying to level up. And one of the great aspects about having Jeff as my co-host and a friend is that he's very objective. And he would let me know each and every week where I can improve. And I think that was reflected in the show, where we were able to take complex topics. I was able to break them down in a clear manner. But over time, if you notice, you go back to our original episodes, they're like an hour and a half because I'm quite verbose, to say the least. However, we've gotten better and better. I've gotten better and better at being more concise and really delivering value to you guys in a way that it's easy to understand, which a lot of people don't realize. But to be able to break down research and studies and then really provide practical applications, you have to know things so much more in depth. You can't just read a study once and say, all right, I'm going to go through the details of this. No, like, most people aren't going to be able to understand that. They're not scientifically literate. So really, it's another skill set that you have to develop and really continue to hone. And that's something I've really tried to do, because ultimately the reason I do this is I just generally want to help people. I want them to avoid the mistakes that I've made, and then I also want to make sure that they are able to look better, feel better, and function better. So that's the update for this week. But now we can get into this week's episode and the topic for du jour, which is going to be on NEAT, which is what honestly you guys are all really here for. So what is NEAT? Non-exercise activity thermogenesis, which is shortened to the acronym NEAT, includes all the forms of physical activity expenditure you engage in every day besides your formal training sessions that are programmed and periodized in a progressive manner, such as your resistance training workouts and your aerobic training sessions. NEAT is one of the four components of our total daily energy expenditure, and it encompasses the energy, or the calories, we expend for everything that we do that is not sleeping, eating, and or intentional exercise. So when I'm speaking about NEAT, I'm basically referring to all the calories you burn outside of the gym, as non-exercise activity thermogenesis is the process of burning calories through different forms of physical activity. What many don't realize is that even low intensity and seemingly like trivial physical activities increase metabolic rate substantially and make up the vast majority of our non-resting energy expenditure, meaning the calories we burn outside of our resting metabolic rate. So you may be asking yourself, what exact things are categorized as falling under activities that can contribute to calories burned through this non-exercise activity thermogenesis? So non-exercise activities encompass all the physical activity and movement you do outside of your intentional training sessions. So this includes your activities of daily living, such as walking around throughout the course of your day, such as walking around your house or your office, making your bed, taking out the trash, washing the dishes, cleaning the house, even different occupational activities, such as if you work a laborious job, or even if you, say, work in retail and you're walking around helping customers. It includes leisure time activities, such as the things you do after you get off of work, such as playing with your kids or your pets. It includes standing and maintaining your posture. It includes fidgeting. It includes talking with your hands and making hand gestures, taking the stairs, walking around and window shopping at the mall, or going grocery shopping, and so much more. So there's so many activities that many don't realize are forms of physical activity that do expend a ton of calories. So let's cover why NEAT is important to focus on and be aware of. And I'll explain why I've been shouting literally at the top of the rooftops for years about the importance of NEAT. So what many don't realize is that NEAT comprises and makes up the largest percentage of your physical activity energy expenditure. And this is even for those of you who train regularly, like the vast majority of you out there listening to this show right now. So when we break down our total daily energy expenditure, there are four components of metabolism that we can churn and burn calories through. So first, we have our basal metabolic rate, or our BMR, which accounts for roughly 50 to 60% of the total calories we burn per day. Second, we have the thermic effect of feeding, also referred to as diet-induced thermogenesis, which are the calories expended through the process of digesting and metabolizing the food we eat, and this generally accounts for 10% of our total daily energy expenditure. Third, we have our exercise activity expenditure, which is the amount of calories we burn through intentional exercise and through training, which accounts for 5% of the total calories that we burn per day. And then last but not least, we have what we're speaking about today, which is our non-exercise activity thermogenesis, aka NEAT. which accounts for an average of 20 to 25% of the calories we burn each and every day. Now, NEAT is so important because it's the largest contributor to our total daily energy expenditure that we can increase by changing our habits, our behaviors, and our lifestyle. NEAT is also the most variable component between individuals and the most modifiable component of our energy expenditure. So, although it counts for an average of 20 to 25% of our TDE, research finds that it can account for up to 50% of daily calories burned for someone who's highly active. So, by increasing the amount of non exercise activities you engage in, you can drastically increase the amount of calories you burn per day. When we look at physical activity expenditure as a whole, this component of our energy expenditure is made up of two components. So that is our need and our eat. And this accounts for an average of 30% of the calories most people burn each and every day. However, in highly active individuals, their physical activity energy expenditure can increase substantially and contribute to 50% of the calories they burn per day. Now, the thing is, many think that their workouts and their training sessions make up the largest portion in percentage of this physical activity energy expenditure. But in reality, our exercise activity thermogenesis, which is the amount of energy we expend during training sessions, only accounts for an average of 5% of the calories we burn. So even for individuals who aren't super active, 25% of the calories they burn each and every day is driven through their NEAT levels. So there's often a five-fold or greater difference in calories burned through exercise activity and non-exercise activity. And that's because if you think about it, most of you aren't in the gym training every single day. And when you are training, it's an intermittent activity, meaning you are resting between sets for longer than you're actually actively lifting weights and engaging in muscular contractions. So although resistance training is great for building muscle and improving the shape and the look of your physique and overall body composition, it isn't a tremendous calorie burner. And that isn't really what we should be looking towards it for anyway. The significant impact our NEAT can have on how many calories we burn per day, and thus how many calories we can eat and maintain our body weight on, and how many calories we can diet on and still lose weight, is something I find many clients aren't aware of prior to working with me. So often, when I initially bring this fact up to my clients, they say that they were unaware that their activities of daily living, like walking around, hitting steps, doing chores around the house, standing instead of sitting, and doing just normal daily activities like chasing their kids or their pets around the house, can burn that many calories. But honestly, if you think about it, most of us probably train intensely for an hour, say 4 to 6 times per week at most. So say you're in the gym actually training 5 hours per week. That's out of a total 168 total hours that we have in the course of a week. This means that your hard training sessions only account for 3% of your total time in a week. And even if you're an advanced trainee that trains, say, 90 minutes per day, 5 times per week, which is what I have a lot of my advanced clients do that want to maximize their muscle growth and body composition outcomes, that comes out to an average of 7.5 hours a week, or little over an hour a day. Well, in that case, there's still 23 other hours throughout the day that we could be burning calories and expending energy, which is why our NEAT accounts for so much more of our total daily energy expenditure than our actual resistance training sessions do. If you're someone whose body composition and physique and metabolic health progress is of high priority and importance to you, and you're training 1 hour per day on average, and then making sure that you get a full 8 hours of sleep per night, that's 9 hours out of your day that's taken up and accounted for. Even in that case, you still have 15 other hours of your day, or 63% of your day left, where you have the choice to either be active in burning and churning through calories, or you can do what the average person, the general population, does, which is to be sedentary and to average around 5,100 steps per day, which is one of the main reasons why we have an obesity epidemic. And we see that the average person gains between 0.5 to 1 kilogram, which equates to 1.1 to 2.2 pounds per year each year across adulthood, which comes out to 11 to 22 pounds gained per decade across the life course. Ultimately, the reason I focus so heavily on my clients' non-exercise activity levels and on educating them on the topic of NEAT and tracking their activity via step counter is because it's the most easily modifiable component of energy expenditure. Meaning, this is the aspect of your total daily energy expenditure you are most in control of, and the one that will allow you to greatly increase the amount of calories you burn each day within a matter of days or weeks. Also, seeing as the vast majority of individuals who contact me for coaching have the goal of getting lean and staying lean, but are super busy high achievers who have limited free time and lots of lifestyle constraints, I've tried to find, develop, and then refine methods and strategies to help them achieve their goals without the constraints of their career and family responsibilities and lifestyle. And really, what I mean by that is we need to find methods that are going to fit within those constraints and be able to be easily implemented and sustained over time to really get those outcomes. And increasing the amount of calories they burn through non exercise activities, like taking post meal walks, using a treadmill desk, and tracking steps have been some of the most effective methods I've found to drive body composition and metabolic health improvements over the last 11 years that I've been working with clients as a physique and nutrition coach. You may be sitting there wondering the benefits of NEAT and doubting if there are many, but rest assured, there are a ton of benefits that can be had from increasing your levels of non exercise activity. So, from an energy expenditure and body composition perspective, increasing NEAT, which can be done through a number of ways, including increasing your daily step count by being more active throughout the day, is a low intensity, easy, and non demanding, non fatiguing method of increasing the total amount of calories you burn each and every day. By boosting your total daily energy expenditure through increasing your non exercise activity, you will be able to have a higher maintenance calorie intake, which can help you maintain a healthy body composition and body fat levels while eating more calories each day. I've also found additional benefits both during lean building and fat loss phases with my clients who have been able to get them to higher NEAT levels and a higher daily step count. During a lean build phase, they're able to stay leaner while eating more calories than they ever have. And they also maintain better metabolic health, insulin sensitivity, and better nutrient partitioning. And then during fat loss phases, I'm able to take these clients and diet them down on higher calories than they have in the past as a result of their energy expenditure levels being higher. So I'm able to split the deficit that we create between increases in activity and then decreases in their total calorie intake. Increasing NEAT makes fat loss easier and more sustainable as you're able to eat more during a dieting phase, which helps with fueling training and recovery, maintaining muscle, maintaining solid biofeedback markers, and also with adherence because you don't have to go as low in calorie intake as you would if you were sedentary and you had low NEAT levels, aka low energy expenditure levels. Higher NEAT levels and specifically higher daily step counts have also been found to be a positive predictor of successful weight loss maintenance. And we also see in research that those who maintain higher levels of activity post diet are less likely to experience rapid fat regain and are more likely to maintain the fat they lost and a leaner physique than those who engage in lower levels of activity once they finish a diet. Higher levels of non exercise activity also help with appetite regulation and with hunger management. So, as higher levels of physical activity, the reason it does this is because higher levels of physical activity lead you to be more sensitive to satiety signals, meaning you're less likely to overeat both during and after a dieting phase. And this is a topic that I have so much data on, both from client case study examples and my client case study files, and then also from the literature, that I'll do a full podcast on how activity affects appetite if those of you out there want me to do so. So please be sure to reach out to me, whether that be through DM at @BrandonDeCruz_, through email, which is bdecruzfitness@gmail.com. And I also post these on Spotify, iTunes, and then also on YouTube. So if you guys are interested in the topic of how does activity, how does exercise, how do steps impact appetite regulation, please do reach out and let me know, because that is something that I know there's a lot of myths and misconceptions about. And if you guys want me to break that down, I'd be more than happy to. Having higher levels of non-exercise activity also improve metabolic health by increasing insulin sensitivity and nutrient partitioning. And this is something I'm heavily focused on, as for the majority of individuals, their metabolic health is compromised and could use improvements. So many don't realize just how many people are suffering from metabolic dysfunction. And I see this frequently with the new client intakes I receive on a weekly basis, but it's also something that we have a mounting body of evidence on. So a recent 2022 study on the metabolic health of US adults found that when looking at metabolic markers such as body fat levels, blood glucose, blood lipids, and blood pressure, 93.2% of Americans are in poor and suboptimal metabolic health. So that means that only 6.8% of Americans today have optimal metabolic health. And I'm trying to help every single person I work with be in that rare 6% of individuals with optimal metabolic health, and in that rare 5% of individuals who lose fat and keep it off long term. And this is where increasing non exercise activity can help us, as it increases insulin sensitivity in a multitude of ways. So frequently moving our muscles through locomotion, such as through walking is one of the most important activities to help with the regulation of our blood sugar control. And what many don't realize is that up to 80% of glucose uptake and disposal in a healthy individual should be handled in a non insulin dependent manner, meaning without the need for us to secrete or produce insulin. We can activate this non insulin mediated form of glucose uptake through movement and exercise, rather than relying on our pancreas releasing insulin to do the job for us. However, most people aren't active enough to get these blood sugar control benefits, which is why there are so many individuals with suboptimal metabolic health, with poor insulin sensitivity, and suffering from insulin resistance, prediabetes, and type 2 diabetes. Engaging in higher levels of physical activity and moving your muscle is a metabolic buffer for both calories and especially glucose. Based on the literature we have on this topic, it wouldn't be a stretch to say that building muscle and moving that muscle are literal forms or natural forms of medication and medicine. And walking is the best non pharmaceutical medication we can take on a daily basis for better metabolic health. So, by staying active and increasing your non exercise activity levels, especially around meals, you're able to increase insulin sensitivity and glucose disposal, while also lowering your postprandial, aka your post meal blood glucose and insulin levels, which is why I take a 10 to 15-minute walk after each and every one of my meals. And I have many of my clients utilize this same habit stacking technique as we all eat multiple times a day. So, tying a post meal walk to each of our meals is an easy way to make increasing your activity levels a habit that actually sticks. Now, the blood sugar lowering effects of movement, specifically in the post meal period, is something that's been tested and proven in countless times in well controlled studies. For example, in a 2012 controlled clinical trial, what they did was they conducted a long term study which looked to test the effects of low intensity walking done after meals on blood sugar excursion from controlled meals as compared to the blood sugar excursions when individuals remained seated after meals. So, to test this, they recruited two groups of individuals. One group was made up of healthy men and women, while the other group was made up of male and female diabetics. So, we have a healthy population and a diseased population with poor, metabolic health, essentially. These individuals went through two conditions to test the effects of inactivity versus activity after meals. In the first condition, they had both the healthy subjects and the diabetics eat a standardized breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Then these meals were followed by remaining seated, which is similar to what most people do after meals, as many will eat a meal at work and then go back to their office and just jump back on the computer. Or when you get home from a long day at work, you will eat a meal in front of the TV and then you'll binge watch a Netflix series later and you haven't gotten up for hours. So in the second condition, they had them eat the exact same three meals, but they also had them do a walk at a low intensity pace after each meal. Now, in the walking condition, what they did was they had them average between 3.5 to 4.2 miles walked across the day within those days. So we're talking about, a little bit of activity after each of those meals and then compressed together, it equated to 3.5 to 4.2 miles walked across the course of 24 hours. They didn't report step counts in this study, but for the average size person, it takes around 2,500 steps to equal a mile. So I'm thinking they probably totaled somewhere between 8,750 to 10,500 steps total per day in the post-meal walking condition. In both conditions, they measured their blood sugar fluctuations through a CGM from 30 minutes prior to the meal ingestion until 4.5 hours after meal consumption to measure the changes in blood sugar levels. Now, in the seated condition, they saw a massive increase in blood sugar following each of the three meals. However, in the physical activity condition, where they walked after meals, the postprandial glycemic excursion, which refers to the spike in blood sugar after meals, was less than half of what it was when they stayed seated after those exact same meals. They also looked at the incremental glucose area under the curve and found that in the seated condition, healthy subjects had a blood glucose measurement of 172 milligrams per deciliter, which is quite high. Whereas in the post-meal walk condition, their blood glucose values came in at 81 milligrams per deciliter. So we're talking optimal metabolic health right there. And that was over a 50% reduction in blood sugar levels. This trend was also seen in type 1 diabetics in the study whose blood glucose measurements were 331 milligrams per deciliter. So that's blowing, we're blowing sugar right out of the kidneys right there. But that was in the seated condition as compared to 135 milligrams per deciliter in the post-meal walk condition. Now, keep in mind, these were type 1 diabetics. We see that type 2 diabetes is diagnosed at a blood glucose measurement of 126 and over. So for type 1 diabetics to be at 135, I'll tell you from someone that had a father that was a diabetic, that is a very good range, especially after consuming a carbohydrate-containing meal. Now, the findings of this study have also been reinforced by a recent 2022 systematic review and meta-analysis on the effects of interrupting prolonged sitting time in adults with standing and light intensity walking on biomarkers of cardiometabolic health in adults. And this review found that both standing and light intensity walking after meals improve postprandial glucose metabolism compared to prolonged sitting. However, they found that light intensity walking elicited a significantly greater attenuation in post-meal glucose levels compared with prolonged sitting and standing breaks. So light intensity walking was also shown to significantly improve postprandial insulin levels compared to prolonged sitting and standing breaks. But intermittent standing bouts showed no significant effect on postprandial insulin compared to the prolonged sitting. Therefore, the research evidence suggests that breaking up prolonged sitting with light intensity walking is a superior intervention to all other methods. So, including, standing, but that short bouts of standing can elicit an improvement in postprandial glucose as compared to a sedentary break. So overall, there are so many benefits to increasing your non-exercise activity levels, as this is a low barrier to entry method that can help you look better, feel better, and function better, all while being able to burn more and eat more as a result of being more active outside the gym and being more active in your day-to-day life. One of the most common questions I receive when I do presentations on the topic of NEAT, or when I do presentations or talks on another related topic, which is my high energy flux approach for fat loss and fat loss maintenance, is how many calories can we really burn through NEAT each and every day? And how influential is non-exercise activity thermogenesis on body composition outcomes? So first and foremost, research has found that the amount of calories burned through NEAT can vary widely between individuals based on their activity levels, their job, and their overall lifestyle. So there's a wide range between how many calories someone can burn per day through non-exercise activity based on how active you are and how many activities you partake in. These differences can add up to the point where two individuals of a similar body weight and body size can have NEAT levels that differ by 2,000 calories per day, meaning they may weigh the same, but one person is burning through 2,000 calories more than the other, and thus they're able to eat much higher calories than the other and maintain a great body composition. So for example, someone working in an office job where they're chair bound may only burn 400 calories per day through the component of NEAT, whereas someone who has a demanding job, such as a physical labor job, can burn through 2,400 calories per day through NEAT. So this means that we could have two individuals with the same BMR, but one has a maintenance calorie intake of 2,000 calories per day, while the other, more active individual, can get away with eating 4,000 calories per day, which is a massive difference in daily food intake. And it's all due to their differences in non-exercise activity. The reason for this massive variability in energy expenditure of up to 2,000 calories per day difference in calories burned through NEAT comes down to the habits and behaviors we engage in and lifestyle that we live on a daily basis. If you have a very active lifestyle, you'll be able to burn far more calories per day and either get lean on a higher calorie intake during a fat loss phase, or you'll be able to eat more during other nutritional phases, such as during a primer phase, a metabolic restoration phase, a reverse dieting phase, a maintenance phase, or in your lean building phases. And in all these phases, your active lifestyle will allow you to get leaner and stay leaner in an easier, more efficient way than just trying to get lean and stay lean by calorie restriction alone, meaning just restricting your food intake. However, if you're someone who's inactive and sedentary, you'll notice that you often have to diet on far fewer calories than you want to in order to be able to get lean. And then after the diet ends, individuals in this situation often find it hard to maintain the low calorie intake needed to stay lean, which is often what leads them to eating in excess of their energy expenditure levels and calorie needs. And this is one of many reasons why rapid weight regain and body fat overshooting is so common, especially in those in the general population, as many live an inactive, mostly sedentary lifestyle due to how many modern conveniences they rely on to automate activities in their daily routine. We even have data that compares people who sit and don't move throughout the day and those who stand, fidget, and even just pace around or walk around more often. The difference in calories burned per hour for those who walk at 1 mile per hour, which is literally the starting speed of a treadmill and is a snail's pace at that, which any of us can achieve by just simply pacing around our office or around our house, as compared to those who are sedentary and inactive, is a 117 calorie per day difference. Now, over the course of an hour, this may not sound like a ton, but burning almost 120 calories more per hour for literally pacing at a painfully slow speed is an easy way to drive up energy expenditure levels. For example, in one study by James Levine, who was the researcher who coined the term NEAT, he found that simple and commonly done non-exercise activities of daily living substantially increase energy expenditure levels. And on average, we see that going from resting to sitting increases energy expenditure by 5 to 10%, whereas standing increases it by 10 to 20%, whereas walking, even at a slow pace, increases energy expenditure anywhere from 100 to 200% over resting conditions over the course of an hour. And then in one study, he took normal weight women and men and had them go through different activities of daily living to see how these different activities impacted the amount of calories they burned. So what they found was that the average person burned 80 calories per hour seated, which could be more or less based on your body weight, as the mean or the average body weight in this study was 167 pounds. However, their levels of calorie burn increased from 80 calories when they were seating to 197 calories per hour when they were pacing around at just 1 mile per hour. It got up to 235 calories per hour walking on a treadmill at 2 miles per hour, and then up to 304 calories per hour walking at 3 miles per hour. So say you decide to break up every other hour of your day by walking on a walking pad at the medium pace, which would be 2 miles per hour. You'd go from burning 640 calories across an 8-hour workday to 1,260 calories. So you'd almost double your energy expenditures just during work. When you compound and add that up, that increase in daily energy expenditure over time, it adds up to a massive increase in calories burned over time, which can lead to either a greater, more efficient rate of fat loss during a diet or the ability to maintain a leaner body composition on a higher calorie intake in some of your other phases. Now, one reason why so many people feel like they need to diet on a very low amount of calories to get lean is because they have such low activity levels that their maintenance calorie intake is lower, and thus they need to eat less to be able to lose a significant amount of fat. For example, in this study, if participants spent 8 hours of their day sitting, they burnt 640 calories on average, whereas those who spent 8 hours moving at just 1 mile per hour, which is literally, like I said, a snail's pace, you could do that walking around your room, to be honest. In that case, when they spent 8 hours of their day just moving around, they burned 1,576 calories as compared to the 640 calories that they burned sitting all day. And this is why I'm an advocate of increasing energy flux, which is another concept I'm going to cover on a soon-to-be episode, because this is something that I'm often asked to speak about and something I've been very successful in integrating with my clients. And what I try to do is I try to have my clients engage in more movement so that they can eat more in all their phases, but especially in a deficit, because I found that it's always the inactive clients that struggle the most with losing fat and especially with keeping it off. A question many people have is whether or not we see larger differences in the amount of calories burned per day through BMR or through NEAT between two people, and how that impacts the differences in their total calorie expenditure, their maintenance calorie intake, and their body composition levels. Now, the common assumption is that our metabolic rate and the differences in BMR are the primary reason why you may see that others around you of a similar body weight can maintain their weight eating a far higher amount of calories per day than you. Often people assume that someone can either stay lean on a higher calorie intake due to having a fast metabolism or just having high daily energy expenditure, but that isn't the case. I can't tell you how many times a client has come to me and asked, how can so and so eat that much and look like that? And often they're under the impression that this person simply has a higher and faster metabolic rate than them, which they believe explains why this individual can eat more and maintain a leaner body composition, or why they can get leaner than them without having to drop calories as low as they do during a dieting phase. But BMR isn't the main component of energy expenditure that's at play here, and responsible for the differences we see in energy expenditure and calorie intake between two individuals of a similar body size. When we look at the research on the variability in energy expenditure and its components, one review found that most people's BMR, so when we're looking specifically at basal metabolic rate and the differences between individuals, we see there's a 5 to 8% difference on the population average, meaning most of us have an average metabolic rate that may only differ a few percent as compared to someone else of our same body weight. So the reason one person can either eat more than you and maintain their body composition, or they can diet and get leaner on a higher amount of calories than another person, isn't due to their metabolic rate. Another review found that the variability in BMR between individuals of a similar age, weight, height, and gender is between 7 to 9%. So we're seeing between a 5 to 9% difference in metabolic rate between individuals, which isn't going to be a massive difference, to be honest with you guys. Because say you have a BMR of 1,500 calories, that would mean that someone else may have between a 75 and 135 calorie higher or lower metabolic rate than you, which isn't going to break the calorie budget bank. The most drastic and significant difference we see in the total amount of calories one person burns per day as compared to another isn't due to their differences in BMR, but it's actually due to their differences in physical activity levels and how many calories are burned through their non-exercise activity thermogenesis. The amount of calories two people can burn just from NEAT can differ up to 2,000 calories per day between individuals of the same weight and body composition. And this has been specifically seen in research that has compared the amount of calories an individual burns during their occupational NEAT. In one study, they compared individuals doing different occupations and saw that those who were chair-bound for the entire day, like an office worker, burned 300 calories per day in NEAT, whereas those who did standing work, like a shop clerk, burned 1,400 calories per day, so they burned 1,100 calories more than the sedentary individual that was stuck in the office all day. Then, when they looked at individuals who did manual labor or a high activity job, such as being a postal worker, they saw that they averaged around 2,300 calories burned per day through NEAT. So they burned 2,000 calories more than the sedentary worker that stayed seated all day. People of the same size can vary in terms of calorie expenditure of up to 2,000 calories per day, which can explain much of what people mistakenly attribute to differences in metabolic rate, when in actuality, it's their different amounts of total daily energy expenditure via differences in the amount of non-exercise activities that they partake in. So you're unlikely to find someone your same weight with a BMR 2,000 calories higher than you, but you can find someone with a NEAT level so much higher than you that it accounts for that much of a difference in the total amount of calories you can burn and thus eat at maintenance. So now that we know that NEAT accounts for the greatest variability in energy expenditure levels between two people, we want to really see, like, how does this impact body composition outcomes? So research done over the past 25 years has found that NEAT plays a massive role in body fat deposition and regulation, meaning how much body fat you gain in response to increasing your calorie intake. So this can explain why some people tend to gain much more fat and gain fat much more readily when they finish the dieting phase, and especially if they do a building phase and it becomes a bulk on wrong, where they utilize way too high of a calorie surplus and then realize it got out of hand real quick. So in 1999, Dr. James Levine conducted an overfeeding study, which really demonstrated the role that NEAT plays in energy expenditure and body weight regulation. So prior to the start of the overfeeding period, they measured every morsel of food and calorie-containing items these participants ate to determine exactly how many calories it took them to remain weight stable. Then once they determined their exact maintenance calorie intake, they overfed each male and female in the study by 1,000 calories per day consistently over 8 weeks. So they received an extra 56,000 calories over that 8-week period. Now, if we use the typical 3,500 calorie rule, each of these individuals should have gained 2 pounds per week and 16 pounds over the course of the study, as it was an 8-week study, and we had 1,000 calorie surplus per day. Now, during the study, they measured every aspect of each person's metabolism in response to this massive increase in calorie intake. What they found was that at the end of the 8 weeks, some people barely gained weight or fat despite being fed 1,000 calories over their usual maintenance intake, whereas others gained a ton more weight and specifically fat mass in response to that same exact 1,000 calorie increase over their baseline maintenance calorie intake. So, for example, the average weight gained over this 8-week overfeeding period was a little over 10 pounds, but it ranged between 3 pounds to 15.8 pounds. And when it came to net body fat gain, it varied between 0.79 pounds, so less than a pound, and up to over 9 pounds. So changes in NEAT accounted for a tenfold difference in fat storage that occurred and directly predicted someone's resistance to fat gain with overfeeding. Now, when looking at different components of these participants' total daily energy expenditure, they found that on average, this prolonged overfeeding period led to an average increase in daily energy expenditure of 554 calories per day. But 2/3 of this increase were due to increases in NEAT, which accounted for an average of 336 extra calories burned per day across all participants. So on average, when these individuals increased their calories by 1,000 calories per day, they dissipated about 34% of those calories through increases in their non-exercise activity, which burned all those extra calories. So 34% more calories being burned essentially within that component. However, these were the averages across the group. So on average, people burned an extra 336 calories from NEAT, from increases in NEAT. But when researchers looked at the individual participants' changes in NEAT levels, they found that some participants increased their energy expenditure levels through NEAT by around 700 calories per day, whereas others actually decreased their NEAT by around 100 calories per day. So in those who increased their NEAT during overfeeding, this increase in NEAT burns through as much as 69% of the extra calories they consumed. So what was originally a 1,000 calorie surplus at the start of the study eventually was reduced to around a 300 calorie surplus due to how much more active these individuals became. So if you can increase NEAT while increasing calories, you will expend more calories and thus deposit less of it in fat storage, and you will gain less body fat during these building phases or during these periods where you're going into positive energy balance. And so this study really shows how impactful our NEAT and physical activity levels are, especially in terms of energy expenditure, body composition management, and body fat gain and body fat regulation. Now, the last topic I want to cover on this podcast is the question that's really on everyone's mind and something that I receive, a question that I've been, receiving for years, which is why are some people leaner than others? And why can some of the people within our lives seemingly, seem to get away with eating a ton, but they stay lean and jacked, whereas many of you can relate to looking at the things that these individuals are eating and feeling like if you take too large of a sniff of their meal, it'll stick to your midsection, your low back, or your muffin top. Now, the differences in NEAT between lean individuals and obese individuals has been examined in the literature, and they found some stark differences, which explain a lot of what's going on and what we actually see in the real world between individuals. So if we look at the research on this topic and we look at the specific differences in lean and obese individuals when it comes to NEAT, we have a good amount of research that's looked at this, but probably the best one was conducted by Dr. James Levine, who coined NEAT and really has done the most immense amount of work on this topic. He is the world's expert in this. And so he conducted a study to examine NEAT's role in body fat gain and the differences in NEAT between lean and obese individuals. To be able to independently test the effects of NEAT on adiposity or body fat gain, he recruited two groups of self-proclaimed couch potatoes who did not engage in intentional exercise. So one group was filled with lean men and women, and the other group was made up of obese men and women. Then over the course of a 10-day study, he tracked their NEAT levels and energy expenditure levels by measuring their body postures and movements every half second for the entire 10-day period. So this was an extensive study in terms of research design and really the extent that they went to. Now, this was not an exercise intervention study. So they had them go about their days in their usual fashion, and they made them stick to their usual routine. They found that both groups were fairly sedentary, but those in the obese group sat for almost 2.5 hours more per day than the lean yet sedentary individuals. Whereas the lean individuals also spent 2 hours more each day walking than the obese individuals. And as a result of sitting less and moving more, those in the lean group burned an average of 350 calories more per day than the obese individuals, despite being a much lower body weight and burning less calories for all their daily activities than the obese individuals who burn more calories per movement due to carrying a bigger body around. And this is an example of the fact that the reason many don't get the results they want in terms of getting lean and staying lean is not due to their genetics and from having a slow or fast metabolism, as those in the obese group actually had a higher resting metabolic rate than the lean individuals. However, it was their lack of activity and low NEAT levels which resulted in why they weren't burning as many calories per day and why they were more predisposed towards weight gain and holding extra body fat. So those in the overweight or those who were overweight were substantially more sedentary than those who were lean. And the lean individuals also burned around 350 calories more per day than the overweight individuals due to their increased physical activity, which allowed them to not only get leaner, but also stay leaner, even though they weren't intentionally exercising. Now, if we think about the average difference in calorie burn per day over the course of a month, these lean individuals burned 10,500 more calories, or 3 pounds. They would have lost 3 pounds more than obese individuals. But if these obese individuals were to take on the mentality that success leaves clues when it comes to getting lean, they may be able to lose 3 pounds per month by simply adopting the NEAT levels of the lean and increasing your energy expenditure by 350 calories per day. So overall, we don't have people whose lack of results are due to a slow or fast metabolism. We have people who have low NEAT who don't get and stay as lean as those with higher levels of NEAT or higher levels of non-exercise activity. Overall, when it comes to differences in energy expenditure levels and maintenance calorie intake, the amount of non-exercise activity you engage in makes all the difference. So if you're someone who struggles with either losing fat or in keeping it off, keep the info I provided in this podcast in mind, and I encourage you and challenge you to get up and move so you can burn more calories, lose more body fat, and you can look better, feel better, and function better. All right, guys, that does it for another episode of the newly rebranded Chasing Clarity podcast with me as your host. I'd really appreciate it if you guys give me feedback on this episode in terms of what you liked and also what things I could improve upon or even what topics that you guys would like me to dive into, because now it's going to be really focused moving forward on those in this community and what they want to hear, especially my clientele, which oftentimes these topics come as a result of conversations I have with my clients or questions I get from them or things that I know that they're highly interested in. So I'd really appreciate that type of feedback from you guys. But if you need anything from me, such as one-on-one coaching, or consultations, feel free to reach out to me through my email, which is bdecruzfitness@gmail.com. I've also popped a link in the description of the show note, which is a new link that I have, which can give you guys information about my coaching services, my consultation services, and my mentorship services. And also, guys, feel free to reach out to me and find me on Instagram at @BrandonDeCruz_. As always, please make sure to share the show and, share it on your stories, or whether it be sending it to a friend that can really help them to level up their knowledge, empower them with education, and also become the best version of themselves, so they just like you can look better, feel better, and function better, and really have a life of abundance. Have a great week, and thank you for tuning in.